everybody. Welcome to the Author's Porch, where every good conversation starts. We are excited. We have Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Author's Porch, where every good conversation starts. I'm already getting my words all twisted. Look at that. Imagine that. We have Victoria Hyla Maldonado with us tonight. Victoria, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good, other than twisting my words, obviously, right?
Happens to the best of us, promise.
I know. We're so excited to have you here tonight. I want to do a quick introduction, and then we're going to get to know you a little bit better, because I know that I want to get to know you a little bit better. I love the artwork of your book. I've watched some of your lives that you've done on your page, and I'm sure that our guests are ready to get to know a little bit more about you and your author journey. So everybody, Victoria Hyla Maldonado comes to us from Chicago, where she lives with her husband and children. She has been writing her whole life and recently has penned anthology short stories, romance, and children's books. Victoria works as a freelance writer and editor and has also worked as a teacher. So let me thank you for being a teacher, because that is extremely commendable, and one that I thought at one point in my life I wanted to do, and I'm very thankful that God had other choices for me.
It's a tough profession. My mom was a teacher, and so that's why I kind of thought of going into it. But I majored in English, and then got a teaching minor, which is how they structure it for high school. So yeah, I mean, I liked teaching, but this is really my passion. So
Can you pinpoint the moment when you knew that you wanted to write? Because you say that you've wrote your whole life, but do you know when you wanted to do it and that was it?
absolutely. Well, I was 9, honestly, and we had this assignment for my reading class to write a book, and I actually have that book, which is hilarious. And it's an Oz fan fiction, so it's called The Adventure of Emerald, and it's kind of like an Oz fan fiction. But I wrote that little book when I was 9, and I got an A+ and all that stuff, and then I was like, I love doing this. This is what I want to do. And it fits and starts. I wrote a lot in middle school, like poetry and romantic shorts and stuff, and then started my first novel when I was 15. So.
Wow, that's impressive. 15 years old, starting your first novel. How did that feel?
I didn't realize I was starting a novel. That was the thing. And that kind of goes into the, inspiration for that novel. I'm backwards. This one, In Death We Part. Basically, I was sitting in gym class and I was a freshman, and this guy I had a crush on, he slides up next to me and he says, "Write a book about me." I guess he had found out I was a writer. And I'm like, okay, give me a character. And he gave me the cowboy character, which is the main love interest in the story. And then the story just kind of built off of that. It started as a 50-page novella. And then over the next, 13 or so years, I just worked on it, reworked it. It grew up with me, and I was able to turn it into the first novel. So.
Wow. Now, so you said that the story developed itself, basically. So do you do you outline everything and then fill in the blanks, or you just kind of write and let the story develop itself as it goes?
I wish I did outline more. It would probably be more efficient. But I basically start with the main romantic or emotional arc in the story. And then I start vaguely outlining the key points that I want to hit. And then I fill it in and make sure everything connects, and go, there's always revisions and going back and making sure everything connects. But I never go from start to finish. Mm-hmm. But it's weird, until I know the end of the book, it's very hard to write past the emotional arc. So I have to write something in the center that's really emotional, then start from the beginning, map some stuff out. And then once I figure out where it's going to end, then it just all flows together. So it's very an interesting process. It's terribly inefficient, but it's what I do.
But it works great. It works great. It produces some amazing books. So you write romance and children's books. So what is
Yeah.
it about those two genres that just speak to you in particular?
I never planned to write children's books. And honestly, I have a friend in Romania who's an author, and I was editing some of her English translations for her books, and she was translating some of my stuff. And she's like, I also write children's books. You should try it. And I'm like, oh, that's silly. I write women's fiction and romance. Like, what am I going to do with that? And then I had this idea for Bartleby the Brave, which is my first children's book. And then I just kind of sat on the idea for a while. And then I was putting together a poetry anthology for a friend of mine who passed and never published. So it's kind of a posthumous poetry anthology. And as I was doing that, I was getting artists that were donating artwork for the anthology. And I came across this man, Ronald Botts, who did these beautiful birds. And the idea I had for a story was a bird. And so I asked him, like, have you ever thought of doing children's books? And he's like, I would love to do that. And so then I, rushed through and wrote the story of Bartleby in like a day or 2 days or something like that. And then I sent it off to him and we collaborated and, on the artwork and, then it got born. And now I'm addicted to children's books because they're so fun. And I wrote my second one, which is Tears for a Butterfly. And then a good friend of mine from high school did the artwork on that, Kieran Wilson. And then, I have one more that's written and being illustrated and another one that I'm currently writing. So
Wow.
it's fun.
Yeah, I do love the artwork. I saw when you were releasing the butterfly book, and the artwork is absolutely beautiful on that one. So I commend your artists because you've got some fantastic artists working with
Yeah.
you.
And what I do, I mean, if anybody else is doing children's books, what I've done is I go to artists first. I don't go to illustrators because I think the art speaks for itself, and then I can mold it into an illustration. Like I can guide them, like leave me room for this, or this is what I want to see on the pages. But I think that having those artists that are so talented, and I get so many compliments on Ronald's stuff in Bartleby, that it's just like I want the art to be first, and then we can meld it into the story and what the characters are doing. So it's
Right.
fun.
What do you find is the hardest part of being an author, if any of it is hard at all?
Well, for me, the writing part comes pretty easily. I don't lack for any inspiration. I'm overwhelmed with the projects that I want to do. So I really think that the marketing aspect, the selling aspect, it's a completely different skill set than writing or editing. And that part is just, I'm overwhelmed by it. I would like to just sit and write and then do interviews and stuff. But you really do have to kind of market. And I never want to be too pushy, or I'm like, oh, yeah, I have some children's books. I don't know what to do with that. And I mean, I write because writing is what I do. And yes, I need to sell them too. But I find that challenging. I really do. Yeah.
Yeah, marketing is one of the most challenging parts in the indie author world because you have to figure it out, right? You have to learn how to market, and you're like, well, I'm an author, I'm not a marketer. I mean, come on.
Like if
I
I
have
were
to
an
learn
author, I'd be doing that.
right, and it can be very expensive as well when all you want to do is pour all your money into your art, which is the writing part of it. So I get that. I struggle with the marketing part myself, and I hear that from a lot of indie authors, and I wish that there was a way to make it easier. I mean, the author's porch was created to assist in that, but that's just a tiny pin drop. I mean, there's so much more that needs to happen.
And that's what I found with marketing is there's these tiny little pinpoints of things you can do, and you just hope something hits.
Yeah. I actually found a blog post, Mibbelar. They're one of the they're the cover designer that I go to for my covers now. I just started using them recently. But they did a blog post on all of the different places, all of the different bloggers and shows that you can do for free that will host your books
Oh, wow.
basically and do massive push outs of your books, and they have these big newsletter lists. They have like thousands of people on their list. So it might be something to look into to help get, shoot me an email afterwards at theauthorsporch.com. If anyone watching wants that, I can give you, just mibbleart.com actually is the website. And their blog post was great because I started getting on to all these different blogs and submitting my information. And then I seen the emails going out, and I was right there with a bunch of other authors, and I was like, wow, they're going out to like 30,000 people. Well, hopefully I'll get some book reads. And I did start seeing some traction in my sales, so that was good. I mean, it wasn't massive, but it was good.
It's better than nothing.
Absolutely. So what genre do you read?
I typically read romance because I don't get a lot of time to sit down and read. So I like to do audiobooks a lot. And I can do menial stuff that I should be doing. And then I can get my books in that way. But sometimes sci-fi or fantasy, and then every once in a while historical fiction too. So, but generally I start looking at romance, and then I kind of go from there.
Yeah, I never really read historical fiction until I was introduced to the books that we're reading on the Bombshell Book Review. I had watched them TV shows, but then now I've started picking up the historical romance, and I'm like, oh, I kind of like this one. These are really interesting. I never realized that. I watched them on TV, but they're very interesting. So when it comes to inspiration on writing your books, where does that come from? Like, what is it that's just kind of just fills your mind with ideas?
Well, I mean, it really depends on what I'm writing. But like I said, for the first book, it was, this guy who I had a crush on. He's like, oh, write a book. But then, so it is a trilogy that I've published. And so they kind of build off each other. So in the subsequent one, I was really inspired by this really minor kind of character that I had introduced in the first book. And I didn't even really know why I was introducing it. It just kind of happened. But then I'm like, oh, that is cool. And then I wanted to continue the main character's story. And so that kind of inspired that. And it's always a little bits from my life, but like the stories are not about me, but it's little snippets and little bits. Like if somebody knows me, they'll key into some of that stuff. Like in my third book, this way, Awake in Elysian Fields, there's a set of twins in there, and they're boy-girl twins, and they're actually based on my own kids.
Very cool.
It's just a small little snippet, but if somebody knows me and knows my kids, they'll be like, oh my God, that's Joaquin and that's Mika. Oh, so funny. But yeah, so there's little bits and pieces of my life. And my third book, I actually was, I like stopped writing for about 6 or 7 years. I was just going through some tremendous life changes, both negative and positive. And, after that time, I had a lot of stuff to work through. So actually my third book really helped me, and it's called Awake in Elysian Fields, if I didn't say it before. But yeah, that one really helped me work through some of my own personal romance issues. So it was very therapeutic. So like, yeah, for the most part, I stem my big novels from my life. For shorter stories, I usually find a little idea that kind of inspires it. And for the children's book, I look to nature and weird animal behaviors that can then be turned into like really cool emotional lessons that are great for kids. So
I love that. I love little weird animal behaviors. I love that because I quite often with my dogs, I make up little stories of what they're thinking when they give me a certain look. And then I go down a rabbit hole, and I wrote books about my dogs because of that. So yeah, we're kindred spirits on that one because
awesome.
and there's a spider in my front yard that weaves a web from the tree down to the ground that I got caught up in one day, and he's quite big, and I named him Chuck. So I look for him in the morning when I'm walking my dogs. So I mean, it's just those little things. Yeah, so I totally get it. I definitely get it.
like the inspiration for Bartleby is seriously when you're driving along a road, the birds dive bomb your windshield.
Yeah.
I see it almost every time I'm in the car. And in my head, I'm like, why do they do that? They have the entire sky. Why? And there is a scientific explanation. They use the updrafts, and then they, to get away from predators.
Yeah.
But I turned it into this cute little bird cup competition that the main character wants to go watch. And then, the story just kind of went off from that. And then in the butterfly book, this way, the butterfly book, um, I was looking for cool animal facts, and I found this, and some of them were really weird. So I'm like, no, that really can't happen. And my dog, of course, is going to pick now to bark. But yeah, so I learned that butterflies and moths drink the tears from animals like crocodiles and turtles and birds, and they do that for nutrients and things like that. And I was like, that is really kind of cool. And then it turned into this whole empathetic, empathic, symbiosis and compassion and love story. So it became something from science and then moved into something emotional. So it could be taught in school with science principles. So,
That is super cool. I love that. Are they on Kindle Unlimited?
yes, they are. Mm-hmm.
Send me the links after the show. I want to read both of those children's books
I
because
will.
I'm very fascinated by them, actually. I love children's books. I'm a kid at heart. I won't lie. I'm a huge kid at heart. And obviously, I can go through a children's book like nobody's business. So, do you write to market or do you write for passion?
I write for passion. I mean, there's certain things that I just have to do. Like with children's books, I have to write in verse. I write in rhymes, and there's sometimes complicated rhymes, and there's a particular rhythm. Like if the story should be slow, it's a slow rhythm, and then if it's a very exciting scene, the rhythm will get really fast. So I write just for my own pleasure and satisfaction, and then I hope that it strikes a chord with someone somewhere. And I've had success with both those ideas.
I like that. So, you told us a little bit about your children's books. Tell us about your romance novels or maybe the trilogy that you have behind us. Give us a
Yeah.
synopsis of some of them.
Yeah, it's called the Hearts Drawn Wyld trilogy, and book one is called In Death We Part. Book two, which is kind of hidden, is Running in the Mist, and then the third is Awake in Elysian Fields. And it is a big story arc. The first two follow the character of Brianna Wilder. She's 17 at the start of the first book, and she has just lost her parents in a car accident. And she's from Chicago and has to go to New Mexico to live with her guardians until she turns 18 in a couple of months. So it's that culture shift from big city to Santa Fe, New Mexico, which although it's a capital, it's a small city, and lots of wilderness and things like that. But then she kind of likes somebody back home, but then she meets the cowboy guy out in New Mexico. So it's kind of that dynamic. She's finding herself, she's trying to get over her parents, and she's also trying to understand what it means to love. And then the second book is a continuation of that story. She's back in Chicago, facing another level of tragedy, and she's trying to convince herself that she's allowed to love again. And then the third book is actually on a different character. It's that character I mentioned that I introduced in the first book, and she becomes a character in the second book as a child. And then this is fast forward 10 years or so past the end of the second book, and now this is her story, and her name is Elise. So Awake in Elysian Fields, kind of her name is a play into that. But yeah, no, her mother died when she was very young, and then that's how she becomes associated with the girl from the first two books. And then she is she's going to Paris to study photography, but she's also going to Paris to learn more about her mother. Because she's like, why was my mother with my father? My father was awful and is now in prison. It's like, it doesn't make sense. It's jarring. So she has a photograph with a signature and a location in Paris, and that's all she has knowledge about her mother. And so while she's there, she meets this French artist. I like artists. My first main character is an artist too. So, but yeah, she meets this French artist who, initially seems a little strange, but they become an item. And then he, through connections, helps her figure out more about her mom. And the story does turn a little dark, but I promise it has a hopeful ending. But overarching, the trilogy as a whole is this message. It's no matter what darkness comes into your life, it doesn't have to define you, and it will turn you into the person that you need to be. And that person can be hopeful, that person can look out positively, and not have to regret what they've been through, but use that to become that ultimate person that they're meant to be. So it's kind of the overarching theme. And there's love and, romance. So.
I like that overarching theme though, because I think that it's a big message for a lot of people, and they need that. I think they definitely need that. And you said that you're currently working on a project, and what can you tell us anything about that, or is it too soon?
I can, yeah. I'm working on a new romance trilogy, and I have several short stories that are going to be in anthologies in the next 2 years. But yeah, the romance trilogy is a new one. I'm about 3/4 of the way through the first book at this point. And the trilogy is called the Hotel Brisas trilogy. And it takes place in Cuernavaca, Mexico, where I lived for a month about 10 or 11 years ago. And it's one of the main characters is very close to me, which is a little humbling because she's not likable at the beginning. So being a little honest. But she grows from that, I promise. And but yeah, she and this other woman who were studying in Cuernavaca go back home, but then they're like, let's buy a hotel there and renovate it and go live there. And this is something that my friend Terry and I did when we were studying in Mexico, where we walked past this hotel every day and we're like, we should buy it. We should make a bed and breakfast, this dream. But then we came back to the States and reality took over again. But this is the what if we had done that scenario. Cool. And then once they get down there, everything is fictionalized, beyond that. But the onset of the book is actually my life, which is a little strange and harrowing. But yeah, so I'm working on the first of that book, and the trilogy follows 5 women who are all interconnected through this hotel renovation. So it's the 2 Americans, one's in her early 30s and one is in her mid 50s. They like the mid 50s is divorced because of something her husband did, and the mid 30s is recently divorced because of something she did. And then when they get to Mexico, there's 3 other women, some young, some old, some in the middle, who just get interwoven into this whole thing. And it's all about their lives and their loves and where they go from that. Yeah.
That's very interesting. It kind of reminds me of some of the stories that we've seen where women come together in the movies, and you're watching each of their lives individually, but then you watch them all coming together and talking and stuff. So that's one to watch. That's definitely one to watch for when it comes out. So, we all start somewhere, and then we get, then we write more books, and we learn more about ourselves. So what do you wish you knew when you started writing that you know now, but you didn't know then?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I wish I had known then was to have confidence that I knew what I was doing. Because for years I just sat on it. My first book, I sat on it, not confident that anybody would care or anybody would want to read it. Because it was this story I'd started when I was 15, and it was like, oh, is it worth reading? But now that I've completed the trilogy and people are reading it and commenting on it, I mean, I'm just seeing how much the story just means to people, and they can relate to it, and it needs to be out in the world. So if I had been able to tell myself that earlier, I might have written more or something sooner. But again, the third book, I had to wait to become a different person to write. So it's hard to say, but I would give myself that vote of confidence. Like, you can write. This is what you're meant to do. This is what you should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And what advice would you give to another author, for all the authors that could be out there listening right now?
I mean, for newer writers, I would say just continue writing. The more you write, the more you're going to get good at it, and the more you're going to find what works for you and what doesn't, and what is meaningful. And to all authors, I mean, I just say write authentically from you. I don't like writing just because I think it'll sell. It's dissonant for me. So I write what's meaningful to me in that moment. It might not be necessarily what everybody's cup of tea is. I mean, I don't write fantasy because that's just not me. But I like to read fantasy, but it's not my genre to write. and it would be inauthentic to try to do that. For me, I like the heightened emotions of the romance genre, and exploring how people get through difficult times. And so for every author, the advice is like, write only the books that you could write from your experiences, write from your heart. If it's meaningful to you, it will be meaningful to somebody else, and that should, take it and make it into something great.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you can feel it, somebody else is going to feel it.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Where can people reach you at, Victoria, if they want to read your books, get in touch with you, book you for a show, or just have a conversation with the author?
Yeah, my website is the best place to go, and it is victoriajhyla.com. And it's Victoria with a C and then JHYLA.com. That has all of my books, all of my socials, my email, contacts, everywhere you could buy everything. It's fairly comprehensive. And I'm also have my editing services on there because I'm an editor. And I've have all the books that I've edited that are on there, so people can see what genres I've done for editing. And it's really, that's all my signing events are on there. It's pretty comprehensive. So yeah, my website is probably the best place to go.
Awesome. And before we head out, do you have any final words? Anything that you want to leave with your audience, leave with our guests who are watching?
Yeah, I mean, just pick up a book. We really want, writers. A book is just a piece of paper unless there's readers to interact with it. So, and that is essential. I mean, books are amazing. Books smell good, but books are not just that. Books are also ebooks. Books are audiobooks. Like I said, I mean, my time is limited because I have 6-year-old twins. And so, ebooks are kind of my digestible form of books right now, but I think that's reading because I'm getting the ideas into my head. But yeah, just give a new author a chance. You might not always like it, but it's great, especially with indie authors. At least give one of their books a chance and then see if it gels with you, if you like their writing style, if something speaks to you. And if it does, then you have a new friend, really. So, because I like to feel like I know the authors once I'm reading their books. And I'll stick with a certain author if I really just kind of something hit me in a neat way. So yeah, I like to do that, and just keep reading. Reading is awesome, and read with your kids. So
Yes, I agree with you 100%. Read with your kids. I read with mine when they were small, and my daughter loved reading. My son is in school. He's an English major with a teaching. He's going to be a teacher, so he's following in your footsteps.
yeah,
Maybe somehow you nursed him into being that way.
yeah.
So thank you so much for being here. Everybody go over to victoriajhyla.com, check out her books as well as her editing services. If you're an author in need and she edits any of the genres, reach out. If you don't see the genre on there, maybe you can talk to her and see if that is a genre that maybe she just doesn't have up on her website, but she does edit, because sometimes, things just kind of click. But I agree with you. Indie authors are amazing. You can talk to them. Some of them will become your best friends, and always be able to reach out and talk to each other. So thanks for coming on tonight, Victoria. Don't forget to send me your children's book links, because I want to check them out. I love reading children's books. I'm a kid at heart, and sometimes I have a great niece, and sometimes I like to send her some books. So she has a bookshelf already that my sister, her grandma, is keeping up to date with new books that I find and I adore. For some reason, she's going to have to like every book that I like. So, but guys, that is it for us tonight here on the Author's Porch. Don't forget to come back on Thursday for the Bombshell book review. Also, we are currently accepting books to review on the Author's Porch. Submissions are due by the 15th of August. Go and email us at theauthorsporch.com if you would like your book reviewed for the magazine. Fourth quarter magazine coming out the first week of October. We are accepting articles. The subject of the magazine is going to be youth authors, everything youth. So if you want to submit an article, it doesn't cost anything to submit an article. If you have something about youth that you want to write about, submit an article. We're trying to get this out to everybody because we believe in what we do here at the Author's Porch, which is lifting authors up. So we are out of here for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in and for being here each and every single week. And we will see you later on. Bye, Victoria. We'll talk soon.
Bye, CJ.
Bye.
All right. Bye.